I call Eugenie Sage.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Similarly, my contribution on the Canterbury Property Boundaries and Related Matters Bill will be short. But I would like to begin by extending our sympathies from the Green Party to people in central Italy who have had that awful 6.2 magnitude earthquake, resulting in a number of deaths, and rescuers working through the night and the early hours of the morning now, trying to see whether there's any survivors in the rubble. And just remembering that profound sense of disorientation and dislocation on September the 4th, when in Canterbury we were woken by that big earthquake in the early hours of the morning. So our thoughts are with them in those mountainous hilltop towns and the distress that they are going through. Mr Speaker, this bill is a good one. It deals with the issue that in the worst affected areas of Christchurch after the earthquakes, surveyors had quite considerable difficulty in locating the legal property boundaries, because the measurements between where the survey pegs and where the markers were on the ground no longer matched the official survey plans. So it was difficult for them to determine where the actual legal boundaries lay. So this is a sensible initiative to ensure that the law is that the boundaries move with the land, and that it, as others have said, it extends out to potential earthquakes in future, so it's future-proofing the legislation. It helps get rid of that uncertainty, and it ensures that any surveys that have been undertaken in Canterbury in this interim period, they stay as the boundaries stay where the surveys found them, as long as those surveys were done in good faith with no negligence. So it is providing that certainty, and certainly most surveys that have been done since the earthquakes have been consistent with the principle that boundaries move with the land. But there are around 400 surveys that I understand were done using a different approach. LINZ is identifying those and will be actively managing them. And as others have done, I would like to commend the Minister for the very consultative approach that was taken with this legislation. Officials consulted also with CanCern, with the City Council. There was an exposure draft that was produced. So a lot of the issues were resolved before the bill came before the House. And we encourage other ministers to do the same. Local Government and Environment Select Committee is debating the local government changes. There was no consultation with the sector before that bill was introduced, so that takes considerable time of submitters, of Select Committee, of the Parliament, to actually address really poorly drafted legislation, when this bill is an example, a shining example, of what happens when there is good consultation before legislation is introduced. So the role of the Select Committee then is only to tweak it. So commend this bill to the House, Mr Speaker, and encourage other ministers to adopt a similar consultative approach prior to introducing legislation.